Welcome to the #1 source for information, news, and opinion on your Columbus Blue Jackets. This is CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. You can also find the audio version on the CBJ Radio SoundCloud page, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Google Play Music, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Now here's your host, Bob McElligott.
Welcome to CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. A huge win for the Blue Jackets last night over the Dallas Stars at Nationwide Arena. The Blue Jackets hang on, and they win it 4-3, the final score. Tell you more about that in just a second. But first, I've got to tell you about Telhio Credit Union, a place where they have been putting people above profits for a long time, since all the way back in 1934. So it begs the question, why use a regular everyday bank when you can use a credit union that puts you ahead of everything? Simple question, simple answer. Want to find out more? Go to telhio.org. Surf through on the website. Click on the different tabs. Find out about the services Telhio Credit Union provides and figure out how those services can best serve you. Telhio Credit Union. Again, find them on the web at telhio.org. Well, last night was a night of firsts for the Blue Jackets. Jack Roslovic scores his first goal as a Blue Jacket at Nationwide Arena. A guy that grew up playing for the Ohio AAA Blue Jackets scores for the NHL's Columbus Blue Jackets. What a great sight it was to watch that. What a great event it was to happen. You know, a guy that is born here, grows up here, gets drafted in the first round by the Winnipeg Jets, gets traded back to his hometown team, and he finds himself all alone, the hash marks of the right wing circle, and beats Anton Hudobin high glove side. Just a great shot by Jack, and hopefully something that is going to just springboard the rest of his season and his time as a Columbus Blue Jacket. Also, Patrik Laine scored his first goal as a Blue Jacket. And I don't know about you, but I was thinking that, you know, Laine's first goal as a Blue Jacket is probably going to be some great wrist shot that has fantastic velocity. Maybe it just goes up underneath the crossbar. Maybe it even knocks the top off the water bottle or something like that. I thought it was going to be just the prettiest goal that you've ever seen. Well, it wasn't. I mean, it was. All goals are pretty when they go in the net, but it was a spin around backhand shot off the goaltender and in. But it also showed you what he can do and the different ways that he can score goals and just how good this guy is, really. Unfortunately, he had a turnover later that resulted in Dallas scoring a goal. But, you know, get that first one out of the way. That's what they all want to do, right? Get the first one out of the way. So both Roslovic and Laine did that last night. And Cam Atkinson scored a goal. We've seen that a lot of times. That is the 200th time that I have called a Cam Atkinson goal. So he hits a milestone. And it was great to see. And, you know, the best part about that goal was it was very much needed. It was 3-2 at that time. The Blue Jackets, I just said on my broadcast, I just said they've got to get some kind of buzz here. They've got to get pressure on Dallas because they're not getting it. Lo and behold, win a face-off. Bjorkstrand comes around, feeds it to Cam in front of the net. And Cam said after the game, that's a face-off play that he and Bjorkstrand drew up themselves. So I guess it's like a quarterback calling his own plays, right? When it works, everybody loves it. But congratulations to Cam Atkinson for getting that goal. And then the Blue Jackets, they can't make it easy on themselves, though, right? I mean, it's always got to be difficult all the time. How about have a 4-3 lead and then take a late penalty and then have it be committed by Boone Jenner, who's one of your better penalty killers, and then let them pull the goalie and go 6-on-4. They survived it. And with Michael Del Zotto with a broken stick and still trying to lay down a block a shot. Riley Nash with a huge block. As John Tortorella says, they found a way, and they win the game 4-3. And now the Carolina Hurricanes are coming to town for a game on Sunday afternoon at 3 and a Monday night game at 7 o'clock to round out the homestand. So I've covered last night's game, but I've got so much to bring to you today. I'm about to preview the Carolina series for you and then go much further than that. You have no idea how much you're going to enjoy this conversation that is coming your way next, because I have been able to catch up with the color analyst for the Carolina Hurricanes, Tripp Tracy, and you're going to find out everything you ever wanted to know about Tripp, maybe even a little bit more. Well, Tripp, what a year it has been. And I'm sitting here with the Blue Jackets playing already a dozen games, and I'm looking at the Hurricanes schedule. And, of course, you were one of the teams that was affected by COVID. You guys have only played 8 games coming into the first of these 2 this weekend against the Blue Jackets. Well, you've played 8 games and won 6 of them, so it's not too bad. But what's it been like for you in particular and being with the Hurricanes? And, sometimes it's touch and go if you're going to play games or not.
Boy, it's certainly unparalleled, isn't it, Bob? Thanks for having me. For Carolina to play 3 and then be shut down after a big win in Nashville, it's just the definition of fluidity, isn't it? You get going and then you're shut down, and now the Hurricanes have been going again for 5 games. So you have to prepare yourself for the unpredictable nature of everything that is the current setting and atmosphere in this truly unique season.
Yeah, as I mentioned, you've won 6 of the 8 games, or they've won 6 of the 8 games so far here. And although the one that was played last night was that was a little unusual. You know what? Now I'm going to catch myself there because you lose in Chicago, and Chicago scores 6 goals. But I guess it's not so unusual because what we're seeing in these 2-game series is how hard it is to win both games. The Blue Jackets get beat up by the Dallas Stars on Tuesday. They come back and they get a win on Thursday, and they split the series. When you played in the East Coast Hockey League and in the American Hockey League, you're well aware of how these 2-game series go. And they were hard to win there in the minor leagues. They're hard to win here in the NHL too, aren't they? No
question. And I mean, I thought about this right from the get-go, Bob, because, that I think it's a natural inclination that whoever loses the first night, they're going to hunker down. I've got this podcast digging in. They're going to dig in the second night. Both teams are going to make adjustments. And I think that it really, across the league, it will show who the truly elite teams are, because the elite teams find a way to win games when they're just okay, but they also they don't need that internal motivation. It seems to they have a level of individual and collective buy-in, professionalism that they're able to bring the same level of compete in both games, the front end and the back end, regardless of what the outcome is the first night. What do you think? I happen to really like it so far. I mean, when we return to normalcy, I think it breeds the right kind of dislike, the familiarity with the 2 teams when you're playing a couple of times, and you're going back, and if you lose, you're on the road, you're stewing at the hotel. I like these 2-game sets so far. I don't know if they have any chance of being a reality, as we hopefully get back to being normal next year, but I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, Jody Shelley and I were talking about this the other day, about whether or not they would keep this. And I agree with you. I like it. As broadcasters, it makes our job easier on game 2. I'll be honest, because we've already prepared for game 1. It's like the playoffs, right? You're getting the same team again. Yeah. It's just easier to go through. But yeah, you're right. There are storylines from the first game that bleed into the second game. If there's a cheap shot in the first game, it carries into the second game, all of that stuff. And then I talked to somebody else in our office from a business standpoint, because they always have to put in the business standpoint. Do you, when you're actually selling tickets again, do you get, how do the fans react to seeing the same team play on Thursday and Saturday, right? So, I mean, I don't know, but I would be fine with it. And the other thing Jody and I discussed is, okay, when you play the teams in the West, how do you do that? Because as you know now, you go out there and you play them once at their place. They play once at your place. Do you have to go to, hey, you go to LA and play 2 this year, and then next year LA comes and plays 2 at your place next year? They're not going to want to keep Connor McDavid only in the West. They're not going to want to keep Sidney Crosby only in the East. We've learned that before. So I don't know, but I think it has a chance to survive in some form, don't you?
Boy, you and Jody are getting some serious, I was going to say a different word, but you guys are getting some serious things done.
We're getting nothing done, Tripp. We're just talking. We get nothing accomplished here. Maybe
Sounds like some of our.
I should just call Bill Daly and
team.
have the conversation, I guess, right?
It sounds like some of our sessions at the broadcast meetings after the great J.R. Rimmer has called it a night.
Yeah, 5:30.
I love rims. Do you know what? Now, thinking about it, and I don't know if this is feasible. I'm just spitballing here, Bob. What if you did it in the division, but then you didn't do it outside the division?
Well, that would make sense because they're always talking about they want to create rivalries within the division. So that would seem to make sense.
You play your divisional opponents more. So you do it, these 2-game sets, and throughout the rest of the league, maybe, and say when you're addressing your Western Conference question, you don't do it. That would be a thought.
Yeah, that makes sense. When Jody and I talk, we always relate this, how tough it is to win back-to-back games to our days in the American Hockey League, going to Newfoundland. When you went to Newfoundland, you played the back-to-back games, and if you lost the first one, you sure as heck better win the second one. And if you won the first one, you really didn't care if you won the second one. That was just the way it was.
Yeah, or you enjoyed St. John's.
Right. Yeah, you know what? Either way, you really didn't lose there. Now that you mentioned it, that was And then later, when Manitoba joined the league, I know when I was in Syracuse, we used to do the same thing. You'd go out there for a full weekend and you play the back-to-back games. But anyway, we'll see if it survives in any form. But so this Hurricanes team, we've become accustomed to seeing this team. A couple of years ago, they were a young team with a lot of speed and, not a lot of expectations. Now they're a proven team that's still a young team. A lot of expectations. How have the expectations as they've gotten greater changed this team, or have they changed it at all?
Well, so far, they hit a bump in the road last night in Chicago that Rod Brindamore didn't like and won't like. But they've answered the bell because when I look, 10 years trudging the road, I can remember all 10 years of it, without the playoffs, does make you a better broadcaster, of how you try to satisfy the fan, tell them the truth, but sell the game and sell the team simultaneously. That's the degree of difficulty of broadcasting right there. So, I'm enjoying the heck out of what the team has done to become truly relevant in the National Hockey League now for the last couple of years. But with that increased expectation, there's more pressure. Each step that you take is a harder step towards the elite group in the National Hockey League. And for the most part this year, they've answered the bell. When they came out of their COVID break, Bob, they had 5 regulars out of the lineup, and they were playing Tampa and then Dallas twice, who you just saw, the Dallas Stars. And they took 6 out of a possible 6 points. That was big time. And that's dealing with the increased pressure and expectation. Did they maybe have a little bit of fear, without those regulars, that they all had to individually and as a group elevate their compete because of the caliber of the teams of the Stanley Cup champions, the Lightning, and the finalists in the Stars? Because then their game just wasn't as good this week. They found a way to win the first game in Chicago. It didn't look the way it should look last night. But on the whole, I think they have dealt with it the way that you would want them to. And I think the quick note is after they got eliminated by the Boston Bruins for the second consecutive year, Rod Brindamore really made a pitch and in concert with Don Waddell to keep this group together. You look at after, I actually thought Columbus would beat the President's Trophy winning Tampa Bay Lightning. I didn't think they'd sweep them. But, Tampa made a decision with intestinal fortitude, I think, to keep their group together. And you see how they were rewarded in learning those hard lessons together. They're the Stanley Cup champs right now. Carolina is trying to do the same thing. And I was on board with that decision and thought process, however it plays out.
And that'll be interesting, too, now that you mentioned that, because, Tampa they kept it together, but what they did from 2 years ago to last year is they added some veteran grit guys. You know, Blake Coleman comes in that series that the Blue Jackets played this past playoffs. The difference were the Barclay Goodrows and Blake Colemans and the guys that they went out and they got to add to the
trade deadline.
Yeah, the trade deadline guys. Yeah. And I think, you know, maybe the Hurricanes are in that spot. Yeah, you got this group that you like and you got this core. And then, you know, I think as, you know, organizations mature. Look, the Blue Jackets did it 2 years ago when they beat Tampa. They went out and they went all in and they got Matt Duchene and they added some offense there. So, you know, maybe you just haven't reached that point yet where you make those little tweaks at the end to get over the next hump, huh?
Well, it's I first of all, I'm glad that you brought this up because everybody on planet Earth talks about Carolina's goaltending. And I've always thought that their goaltenders are better than what their numbers suggest. But my thought was, you know, Peter Mrazek, who unfortunately is hurt now, and he had enjoyed maybe the best start of his NHL career. Reimer had a bit of a tough night last night, but that was more reflective of the team. But, you know, he's been a very good Hurricane. But everybody said this offseason, go out and get new goaltending. And my thought was, keep this group together. These guys collectively should give you a chance to win. And then if you feel your team is the real deal at the trade deadline, just like Tampa did what they did in acquiring Coleman and Goodrow, addressing a need, then if you don't think your goaltending gives you a chance to really win, then you make your deal at the deadline. Once your team has proven, you know, that they're ready to take those next steps, or if your goaltending's excellent, you stick with it. So that, you know, Bob, I'm glad you brought that up, but now that's gotten even more intriguing with Mrazek's injury and who's going to play in the front end and the back end of this back-to-back with the Blue Jackets. Alex Nedeljkovic actually, I think, played half a game maybe in Columbus, which was his first NHL action a few years ago. He's from the area. I know that, I mean, I'm wearing this hat for our buddy Zach Werenski because he's from my hometown, Michigan colors, and he used to play with Alex Nedeljkovic with Bell Tire. So now it's particularly intriguing where the Hurricanes goaltending goes from here in the absence of Peter Mrazek.
Yeah, and ironically, the Blue Jackets are in the same spot because Elvis Merzlikins gets hurt in practice the other day on Wednesday. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. Now you've got two teams that are coming into a back-to-back, which are kind of rare now. There's usually a day in between games. But it's a back-to-back, and both of them are searching for a goalie. Matisse Kivlenieks has been activated by the Blue Jackets. And, yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what John Tortorella does if he goes to Korpisalo in both games or not. But when you bring up that goaltending, it made me think of this, and tell me if you agree or disagree. You're right. With Carolina, the goaltending always comes up. I think people always look at it and go, how do they win with those two guys? Well, because it's a team game. You know, the same with the Blue Jackets. Your team plays right, your goalies play well, you win the game. But Mrazek and Reimer are two more veteran guys that were other places. You've got in the Columbus, there's Korpisalo, who has come up through the system, and Merzlikins, who just comes over from Europe last year. So you got two young goaltenders. My point here is, I think you could look at both of these franchises and say, oh, do you have good enough goaltending? But the difference is people look at Columbus and they go, oh, they've got a great young tandem. I think just because Carolina has two guys that have been other places and maybe didn't have the greatest success in those places, that's why it's automatically looked at like, oh, there's a weakness at that position.
Interesting point. I would say, Bob, Peter Mrazek is, you know, this guy has the tools to be a number one based on what he did at times in Detroit. Philadelphia was brief and was not a good chapter. But when I say that, he's like a golfer that is puring it on the practice tee as a 1A, you know, a guy that combines to provide good goaltending. But then it is a long mental and physical walk to bring that swing to the first tee. He has the ability to do it. This is the year, though, I think that, and this, I would have said this before, his unfortunate injury, you know, and needing surgery on his thumb. But can he, as a smaller guy, mentally and physically be the guy? for a significant portion of games, 56 games in this schedule. So what would you consider a number one workload? And I think if he can't do it this year, my belief would be Peter will be known around the league as an excellent 1A or 1B, not the guy. So that's the story that I continue to look at. Again, very unfortunate with his injury. Reimer has been an excellent Hurricane. His numbers validate that right from the get-go with regards to being the understudy or the 1B. Historically in his career, mentally, for whatever reason, when he's had to be the guy, Bob, he hasn't been able to be the guy. But as a backup, as a guy that can step in for a finite period of time, his numbers have been excellent. So I look at I still see Peter as a goaltender that could potentially make that walk to the first tee. I do think it's now or never, Bob. And then you have a goaltender who was drafted and developed in the organization in Nedeljkovic that now you're going to find out due to the injury of Peter Mrazek what you've got. And then on all three goaltenders, you have expiring contracts. So this is really a state of the union on all three fronts. And then you figure out what you're going to do either at the trade deadline or this upcoming summer.
I got to be honest with you. I've always looked at Mrazek differently, I think, than some other people do. And I'll tell you why. Because when Grand Rapids won the Calder Cup in the American Hockey League, and he was the goaltender there, I did 3 of those games, and I watched him play in that series, and he was lights out. He won 2 of the 3 games that I did there, and he just looked great. So, Tripp, I always have a soft spot for those guys that performed well in the American Hockey League because I was in the American Hockey League. And really, so it's in there somewhere, right? When you see it at some level, it's in there. Like you said, he's got the tools.
His high end, Bob, his high end, no question about it, is right there with the elite high end of the top number one goaltenders in the league. I don't think anybody would ever argue that. When he gets on a roll, I mean, you mentioned the American League when he wins the Calder Cup, but how about what he did in Western Canada for the Czechs and the World Juniors? I mean, this is a guy, when he gets hot, don't touch him. You're going to get burned. But can he do it consistently? Can he, physically, will his conditioning be good enough to handle the workload of being a number one? He's an emotional goaltender. Can he play within himself to be able to conserve the proper emotions to handle the workload? It's, again, mental and physical long walk and totally different going from being a platoon goaltender and an excellent one to being the guy. But there is no doubt about it. His high end is as good as anybody it has in hockey. It's a question if he can go from being a streaky goaltender to a consistently reliable performer, if he's going to be able to adjust and grab the bull by the horns and be that guy.
I'm talking with Tripp Tracy. He's a color analyst for the Carolina Hurricanes, and he's a former goaltender. So that's why he's breaking it down so expertly here. I have a question for you that I've never, in all the years that I've been in the league, I have never asked you this, but I have always wondered it. I saw you play when I was in the East Coast Hockey League with the Johnstown Chiefs. I saw you in goal for the Richmond Renegades many, many years ago.
Yeah.
You played there in Richmond. You played in the American League in both Springfield and New Haven. You did not play, and this is after you came out of Harvard, so maybe this is the answer to the question. You're a smart guy. You never played in the National Hockey League. How have you made a career of being a color analyst for all these years in the NHL?
Well, it's funny because I got called up for 3 games in the NHL, and I was sipping on my coffee. It was more like a shot of espresso. That's how quick it was. When I stopped, so I got called up to the NHL. It was against Dallas, and my mom and dad were there, and it's, even though I didn't get in, that's a long story because Sean Hill, our defenseman at the time, saw it because we were down to Dallas. They might have won the cup that year. And I know Paul Maurice looked down at me, and I knew Paul because I had played junior hockey for CompuWare in Detroit. and he was coaching, starting his coaching career in the OHL at that point. We were down in the first period, and Mo looked down at me, and I went, and I gave the old deer in headlights look. But then Kevin Dineen, a former Blue Jacket, was our captain. And before I got sent down against the Rangers, Kevin Dineen goes, I thought it was, I'll clean up. I thought it was wrong that, Mo didn't put you in against Dallas. That was wrong. And I'm like, yeah. And so anyway, then I start broadcasting, and I'll answer your question the next year as to how. And, I was telling this story on a bus ride after we landed in Florida. And Sean Hill, who had a great sense of humor, he hears me telling this story. He goes, my real name's Emmett. He goes, what are you talking about, Emmett? I saw Mo look down at you. We were down, and you gave him the look, like deer in headlights, passing the buck. And so I asked Mo, I said, Mo, what if I had given you the eye of the tiger? Because I was playing well in the American League at that point. And he goes, nah, you weren't going in. I didn't want to put you in that situation. And I'm like, come on, Mo. Anyways, but after that year, the Hurricanes were split in New Haven of Florida and Carolina. And in Springfield, you mentioned we were split, the Coyotes and the Whalers. So I felt like I needed to make that jump to being the third guy. So the first call up, and I didn't make that jump. So I always wanted to be a broadcaster. I went to go work at CNN, but I was just really a production assistant. And the color analyst who was working with my longtime partner, John Forsland, Bill Gardner, got an opportunity to go home to Chicago. And so the Hurricanes, right up against the start of the season, needed to hire a color analyst. And I just figured I'd put my hat in the ring. I had done a few things in the American League, but Peter Karmanos, the longtime owner, I roomed with his son, Jason, at Harvard. I was a teammate with him. I was the best man at his wedding. We had played junior hockey together. And the truth is this, Bob. Pete Karmanos gave me a job with zero experience just because he believed in what I could eventually do. I don't know if he ever could have done that. If you weren't growing in a new hockey market in a temporary building in Greensboro. And my gosh, I remember going to John Forsland's house. I had never done television. After the first game we did, it was in Greensboro, and I think it was Vincent Lecavalier's first or second game in the league. I went over to Johnny's house the next night, and we didn't even to watch the film. We hadn't even made it through the first half of the second period. And I think I counted that I had said certainly 32 times. Then we go to Nashville so it ends up being Nashville's first ever win. And our Hall of Fame radio announcer, president of our broadcast association, Chuck Caden, says, well, let's go out and have a nice dinner in Nashville. That led to enjoying Nashville. All right. So then the next night, David Karp, our defenseman, he gets he's ticked off about something, and he's headed to the box, and he shoots a puck or breaks the glass with his stick. So now we got a 15-minute delay in the first period. I've never done television before. I've been out the night before, and I'm talking about the Nashville Predator logo. And that ended up, that broadcast, because Nashville didn't do television, that ended up being like on the ESPN Classic channel and the Disney channel. And I mean, if you ever want to vomit, that's how you do it. And so but it was Pete Karmanos believing in me. And over the years, I'd like to think I've made good on that belief. But, with a guy like you that's come through the American Hockey League, and I mentioned John, same thing, I got the opportunity with no experience, Bob.
Well, hey, you know what? Sometimes that's how it works. And obviously Peter took a gamble, and his gamble paid off there. And I was just thinking while you're talking about that, look how close the Hartford Whalers came to maybe being in Columbus and playing in a temporary building there. I mean, holy cow. Just think fate could have had it to where you and I could have been working together.
I remember because, my mom and dad were close with Pete Karmanos, and we'd go for dinner after our games. He'd always come and watch Jason, his son, and I in college. And Jason has won 3 Stanley Cups with Jim Rutherford, 1 in Carolina, 2 in Pittsburgh, as assistant general manager. And I remember him talking about it at some of those dinners when he owned the Whalers, how much he loved Columbus. He absolutely loved Columbus. So yeah, but I'm going to tell you right now, Columbus has a richer hockey history. I don't know. I'm going to ask him. I was on the phone with him yesterday for a while, Pete, and the Hall of Famer that he is. I'm going to ask him I don't know if he could have ever given some raw color guy the job with no experience in a market like Columbus, because, I know you had never had an NHL team, but there were some hockey roots there. I mean, I would have gotten lambasted.
Well, just think now. So you're telling the story how you were an unproven, untested guy that came in to work with John Forsland. After doing that for over 20 years, John has left. He's doing stuff for NBC Sports, and he's going to join the Seattle Kraken. So now all of a sudden, you're the veteran broadcaster working with a brand new guy, helping him to get adjusted to the league.
It's obviously I thoroughly enjoyed 22 years with John, and we had some lean years without the playoffs, Bob, that made us better broadcasters. But when the Hurricanes were in it, they went deep. And I remember when the team insisted that he and I come in the room after their Game 7 win against the Edmonton Oilers. That's something I'll never forget, because John and I were like, come on, this is for you guys. This is for the boys. And they insisted. His son, Matthew, was a goaltender. He was in there with us. And so I think about that. But, yeah, I mean, Mike Maniscalco was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And, he's done a very, very fine job so far. You can never fill John Forsland's shoes. That would be impossible. But it makes me think about, because I was just talking to the crew in Seattle, after a great hire and just an elite voice in everything that John is. And it made me think about that first year when I got the job and we were playing in Greensboro. You had to hang out there the whole day because you were living in Raleigh. And John and Chuck Hayden and I would go to Jack Astor's just to kill time to have lunch. I was happy. I'm a 24-year-old guy, color analyst in the NHL. But those guys were classic. I mean, because they could have been bitching the entire time. Like, what is this? We've come from Hartford. We're at Jack Astor's in Greensboro. We got to hang around all day, call this game. And, so now it is my responsibility to be there for Mike. If there's one thing I have learned, Bob, and you tell me if you agree with this, it's just like the guys on the ice. If you ever try to overcompensate and do more than you should, just to, in my case, make your play-by-play guy comfortable, you're not helping yourself and you're not helping the broadcast. So I try to just improve my chemistry with Mike. We're certainly very good friends out of the broadcast booth. I try to just make him feel comfortable. But having worked with a few other partners when John's been doing national games over the years, the biggest mistake I could make is to try to do more than I should. And so that's really been, my modus operandi. And you're calling these games off the monitor. So Mike's done a very fine job. He did in the bubble. And now with, the road games. I said to you offline, Bob, I said, because 8 days ago we had Tampa in the building. It was the first time I'd seen a hockey game in, I think, 10 or 11 months. And I said at one point in the second period, I turned to Mike over to my left. I said, God, there's some good pace to this game. And then I caught myself and I said, well, of course there is. It's the first time I've seen a game live in, 10 or 11 months.
It's funny you say the worst thing you could do is try to do too much, because I'll tell you, as a play-by-play guy, the thing we hate the most is a color analyst trying to do too much. No, I'm kidding. But the part that you said about just like the guys on the ice, that's absolutely true. And it's funny how I'm hearing you talk about trying to make Mike a little bit more comfortable, because, when I get to work with somebody, it normally is somebody that hasn't done the job before, right? And they have interest. Yeah. When Jody Shelley first came in, Jody and I were together in Johnstown. We were together in Syracuse. We'd known each other forever, which made it a lot easier. But, he's coming into a situation where, he's trying something new, and, as you know, as a player, you're really good at what you do, and now you're trying something new, and there's a little trepidation there at the beginning. So I feel the same way. Like, my first job is to make them comfortable, and let them know, okay, here's where you can talk, and here's how you do it. This is how it goes, and you get into a flow. So it's fun, and I enjoy it, quite frankly. And I hope you're enjoying this experience with Mike, trying to help him to get himself settled in and figure out who he's going to be and how he's going to be as a broadcaster. Because when I see Jody Shelley on the NHL Network, or I see him on Fox Sports here, or if I just talk to him one-on-one, I have a lot of pride, because I feel like I help my friend be really good at what he does now. Jean-Luc Grandpierre is another guy. He's worked games with me. He's doing our pregame and intermission stuff now. So it's fun. There's a real sense of satisfaction to help somebody get better in this business. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. It was for me. When I was in Springfield, and we were loaded with actually our number one goaltender. He just had a birthday in Columbus. Was my buddy Manny Legacy. And
hey, by the way, I asked Manny if he had any stories about you, and then I said that they had to be arable stories, and then I got a nope.
yeah. There's a couple that they're not arable. Happy belated birthday to my Portland, Maine friend. He'll get that. Anyway, because we were playing Hershey in the Calder Cup semifinals. And I was, the third goalie at that point. We were split between Hartford and the Coyotes. Marty ended up striking an official, which hurt us. But I was Chris Kerber, the very, very fine, radio voice with St. Louis. He asked me in that Hershey series, since I was the third guy, if I wanted to work with him on radio. What a building that was. And Hershey and Hershey, very good team. They won the Calder Cup. What a race.
Used to sit right in the crowd in the Hershey Park Arena, right? You had to literally climb through the seats to get to where you were broadcasting from there, which was okay pregame. But once you were in, weren't you, Tripp?
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. And I was, thank God, a little bit more svelte in my 47-year-old frame now. But Chris Kerber really, talk about paying it forward, just like you were mentioning with a great guy like Jody. When I knew I was, in consideration, or at least getting an interview in Carolina, Chris Kerber quickly put together a tape of us working together. So at least I had something. Wow. He didn't have to do that. Here's a guy, he would continue to be in the American Hockey League for many years before he finally graduated, most deservingly so, to the NHL. Now he's got a guy that, color analyst that worked a couple of games with him, 24 years old, that's going to get an opportunity to be, in the NHL without having to go through any of these steps. And he didn't hesitate even in the least to put together that tape for me. That's what it is truly all about. Bob, you have an infectious charisma. Okay, that's going to make a guy like Jody, whoever works with you, at ease. Mike Maniscalco has excellent charisma as well, and I think it's very advantageous. I think it's something that listeners and/or viewers really, really like. But then the other thing I do think about, like Carolina last night, in terms of what was on the ice. Unlike them, because like Columbus, they're a very good defensive team. When they got tired, it was the game-winning goal. They started to run around, instead of doing less better. And I've always thought of that as a color analyst. I'd like to think it would be to the pleasure if we ever work together with you as my play-by-play guy. When you get tired, what do you typically do? You talk more, or you try to do more in a back-to-back. Torts would probably say, do less better. Do less better. Shorter shifts, protect the dangerous areas of the ice. If you can get to the outside, to the exterior of the rink. I'm just thinking about the game-winning goal last night because it applies. So I say every year, my TV's right over there. I'm going to watch Columbus and Dallas after we get off the Zoom. When I've watched myself, if I don't vomit, I've never once said, Boy, Tripp, you didn't talk enough. I've oftentimes said, my God, will you just shut up? You've talked way too much.
I have no choice because I work by myself. So if I'm not talking, then it's just dead air. But I want to ask you just a couple more quick things here. You mentioned Jason Karmanos. He was in Pittsburgh. He had gotten let go. Jim Rutherford, who was the former Carolina GM, was in Pittsburgh. He kind of just up and resigns here a short time ago. Did that take you by surprise?
There was some Jimmy resigning, yes, to a degree. Yeah. But I had heard rumblings. I mean, I had him on my podcast, Digging In with Tripp, and as a matter of fact, Bob, the firing Jason, that was in October. That didn't completely surprise me, just because. And I don't. Jason would always, they won 3 Stanley Cups together, and Jason got let go by his father in Carolina as well. And I just think it's really, really important that, Bob, it be known, this is a guy that I think would be an outstanding general manager. He has the courage and the guts. If he doesn't agree with somebody he cares about personally or professionally with the decision they're making, he's going to tell you. I can tell you, I was his best man. I've been on the receiving end of that. Okay. And that's true. That's digging in for someone you care about, saying the hard thing. And I'm very, very happy that he did just get an interview for the vacant general manager's job in Pittsburgh. So that tells you what they think about him. He may have been terminated, but he got an interview. And I think he would be an outstanding choice. Jimmy, I think Jimmy felt very strongly at this point in time about, where he thinks the Penguins should go. I think he may well have been looking for some stability with regards to a contract extension. So when he wasn't given that, maybe if there were some personnel disagreements, that it maybe became a little bit less shocking. But one thing that is irrefutable, when we had Jim here for the many, many years that he was our president and general manager, Bob, he was always fearless in not only making deals. I mean, he made 2 huge ones the year we won the Stanley Cup, and Doug Waite well before the trade deadline, and then Mark Recchi right before the deadline, actually after Eric Cole broke his neck, a hit with Brooks Orpik. And both players waived their no-trade clauses to come here. But if he fumbled one of his deals, because they're not all going to go right, it wouldn't impact his courage and conviction to make the next deal. And isn't that, Bob? That's like a player going out and having a costly turnover and still being willing to try to make the next play. Yeah. And so he goes and wins back-to-back Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh in a salary cap era. Very deserving of being in the Hall of Fame. I wish that he and Jason hadn't broken up, because I thought that them as a tandem was outstanding. And Jimmy did, after Jason got let go here in Carolina, he brought him to Pittsburgh. So that tells you, even with the conclusion in Pittsburgh, what he thinks of what he brings to the table. Will Jimmy work again? I think he may even be coming down here to Raleigh. He still has a place here. And I'm sure it'll take some time to figure out what the next move is. So getting back to your original question, yes, there was some shock value in both instances of Karmanos being let go and then Jimmy resigning. But once I read the tea leaves, it became, I guess, a little bit less shocking.
Yeah, I hope Jim comes back, because, one thing that I really appreciate about him, watching him from afar, is in this day and age where you don't see many trades, and I know the Blue Jackets just made a really big one there 2 weeks ago, but you don't see many trades. But with Jim Rutherford, he's, like you said, he's not afraid, and he's a wheeler dealer. If he feels that something's not working on his team, even if he brought that reason in, he'll get rid of it right away, and he's going to go out there and fix it. So I'll miss that. I hope he gets a job somewhere else just for that. All right, Zach Werenski, you're both from Detroit. You both seem to be pretty close. How much do you like talking to Zach?
Well, I love it. We're not only just from Detroit, we're both from Grosse Pointe. So, I mean, he is, boy, you know, a mile from my house, maybe less. And, you know, I love it. I'm wearing my Michigan trucker for him, and he loves you. Zach, I was having dinner with him. Oh boy, back in October, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. And I said, you know what? I said, you know, I turned to him at one point. I said, you know what? You're like a Russian. And I said, because, and I meant it, Russians, I think as much as any nationality, you have to earn their trust. They feel you out. You have to earn their trust. And once you do, you know, you can develop some wonderful friendships. Now, I don't know if that, you know, when say guys like Panarin and Bobrovsky were in Columbus, if you had that type of experience, I don't know either one of those guys well. So Zach, you have to earn his trust. I'm from the same hometown. I give him heat and I said, and I told him at that dinner, I may have, you know, had one or two. And I said to him, I say, oh yeah, you know what? You got to earn and I like that about him. I thought that in the series against Toronto in the bubble, I thought he was the best player on either team. And I remember, oh my gosh, in game 4, his mom and I are friends. You know, we like to, you know, we all had his dad too. We go out on the boat in summertime. Anyway, there was like 6 minutes left. What was it in game 4, Friday night game? And I think you guys had a 3-goal lead. So I texted Kristen, his mom, and I said, it's looking good. And then boom,
Jinx.
the whole thing falls apart. And Zach gets hurt. I was the happiest guy on planet Earth. And not only did the Jackets win, but Zach came back and played, and he played marvelously in game 5. I mean, I remember I texted Torts, and I'm a gigantic Torts believer. I have always been. And I said, you know, on Saturday, you guys will win game 5. So, I have all sorts of investment in the Columbus Blue Jackets because of my love for Zach and for John Tortorella. And, you know, I've gotten to know Zach so well. And I know he has his girlfriend, Odette, I'm also very friendly with. They're they're wonderful, wonderful, salt of the earth, pure Michiganders, Grosse Pointers from my hometown.
Well, Tripp, this has been wonderful. And this is why I wanted to have you on, because my conversations I've had with you over the years, you know, being in Carolina or you being in Columbus or with us being at the broadcast meetings in New York, all of the conversations are just like this. You are just so down to earth and fun to talk to and entertaining. So thank you very much for talking with me and to the Blue Jackets fans today about the Hurricanes and more importantly about all the other stuff that we talked about too. But plug your podcast one more time. Where can people find it? Because if you've enjoyed this conversation I've had with Tripp, I know you're going to enjoy listening to him on his podcast.
Well, Bob, first of all, I just love being with you. I mean, my gosh, I'm not trying to just pump tires, but you have that effortless ease to you of a Ron Burgundy. You know, so, and this, anyways, it's, you know, I was an old schooler, dinosaur with social media, but now that I'm doing Digging In with Tripp, it's at Dig In Tripp on both Twitter and Instagram. And Twitter, I'm Tripp Tracy. On Instagram, I'm Tracy_Tripp. And, you know, maybe check out in the next day or two. I know he's not an Ohio native, but Pittsburgh isn't far away. The great rivalry you have with the Penguins. And I just dug in with Bill Cowher in advance of Coach Cowher calling the Super Bowl for CBS Sports on Sunday. So, yeah, I mean, that guy has got a shovel that's always dug deep to the center of the earth. So, you know, Bill Cowher, I just put out that episode yesterday. You can check that out at Dig In Tripp or Tripp Tracy, Twitter, Tracy_Tripp.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a guy that was born in Pittsburgh and grew up in Western Pennsylvania, he's my second favorite Steeler coach because, Chuck Noll was there first, and I'm old enough to appreciate what Chuck Noll did. But I'm going to go listen to that. I can't wait to listen to that because I really like to listen to Coach Cowher, and I respect him, and I know it's going to be a great conversation because he has it with you. So I'm going to check it out. How often do you put out your podcast?
Once a week. Once a week. Yeah, once a week. I'll give you a teaser for next week. It's because of my love for John Tortorella. It's going to be next week. It's going to be Hall of Famer Marty St. Louis. And he says, his relation, he loves John Tortorella. Yeah. You heard his Hall of Fame induction speech, the way he spoke about him. And what did he say? He said that, Torts, he said he's the kind of coach, and I think this says a lot about Torts. He said he'd give you a chance to shove it up his ass, and he loved it when you shoved it up his ass. I mean, that's what he said and they had a phenomenal relationship in Tampa. Both strong-willed personalities, and that part of it was St. Louis. I hope that people check out it. And by the way, Coach Cowher talks about Chuck Noll. He talks about Marty Schottenheimer. And aside from speaking about the game, he coached with Bruce Arians was his, I believe, wide receivers coach when they won the Super Bowl with the Steelers in Detroit. And of course, strong ties with Andy Reid. So he's the kind of guy. I remember his son-in-law, Kevin Westgarth, was playing for the Hurricanes. And Bill Cowher, very good friends as well with Ronnie Francis. So he came in to the booth in the second period to come on with John and I. I had never met him before. And he waltzed through the door and he put his big hand out there with that chin and he goes, "Trace, I enjoy your work on television. I'm telling you right there. I mean, look at this. I'm not sure I was going to be Jerome Bettis, but I would run through a million walls for Bill Cowher." And I think when you listen to the episode, just about anybody would run through all million of those walls.
I'm definitely going to listen to that. And I think that's awesome. And I'm thinking as you're describing this, we were just talking about you being a 22-year-old with no experience, and look where you are now, interviewing some of the biggest names in sports.
Just got to be yourself. Just got to be yourself, Bob. I mean, that's I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. And I mean this in the strongest compliment. The people in San Diego do too, because you have that effort.
Well, thanks again, Tripp. So much appreciated. And I can't wait until we're going back and forth again, because then we can have these conversations maybe over beer and we can have them unedited, which is going to be even more fun. Thank you.
I can't wait. And to all the great fans in Columbus, I will actually miss the cannon.
That was so fun. I can't begin to tell you, when I do this every week and for months and years, there are sometimes you walk away from doing an interview and you would go do the whole thing over again because you just enjoyed it so much. And that's how I am after that conversation with Tripp Tracy. So I appreciate Tripp coming on with us today and previewing the series against the Hurricanes and much, much more as he did. Again, the first game of that 2-game series is going to be on Sunday. Yes, I know it's Super Bowl Sunday, but it's an early game, 3:00 in the afternoon. Blue Jackets and the Hurricanes. You can catch the pregame action starting at 2:30 on the Blue Jackets radio network and on Fox Sports Ohio. So I hope that you will enjoy the Blue Jackets and the Hurricanes. Then you can sit and watch the Super Bowl, and then the Blue Jackets and the Hurricanes will do it all over again the very next day. So nice win for the Blue Jackets last night. They'll enjoy it for a couple of days as they have a day off today and then a practice day tomorrow to get ready for Carolina. That's going to do it for today's edition of CBJ in 30, presented by Telhio Credit Union. Until next time, I'm Bob McElligott saying so long.